Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is the video for week ending November the 20th. Got a lot to go over here this week. We've got every week from here on out, we're going to have fights that are basically on the weekends going forward. There's a lot of stuff in between, but even with that said, we're going to focus on a few here and there. So let's get with the results from last week before we spend a lot of time on the second latter part of this. And one of the things we're going to go over real quick is that the card over in Manchester, England, with David Haye fighting against Fraudley Harrison there. Was this a surprise to me? No, not really, kind of a little bit this and that. I didn't expect Harrison to blow this opportunity he had. I saw the whole fight. It was absolutely terrible. He hardly threw any. He didn't throw one left hand in that fight, I don't think. And I only saw it once, so I don't know, on a German feed. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you get a shot at the title, why don't you at least, if you're going to get embarrassed, why don't you go out on your shield? He'll never get another chance again. David Haye, what does this prove? Nothing much. That guy actually, and a lot of you know I'm kind of sour on that guy, and I should probably elaborate why. One, and let me pull this up so I could be factually based before I say this. Everybody thinks he was this dynamic cruiserweight. He's living off of two victories, basically. He's living off of a victory over Jean-Marc Mormec, in a life and death struggle in which he was down and he had to come back to win the fight in Paris, and then he's living off of that unification bout against Enzo Maccarinelli. Is that looking to be that good of a victory now? I mean, every guy Maccarinelli gets in the ring with knocks him out. So my point is that he's got a victory over Jean-Marc Mormec, who's been knocked out before, and Enzo Maccarinelli, who's been knocked out a bunch of times since David Haye fought him. This isn't exactly Evander Holyfield, folks. And he's making all this noise at the heavyweight division. The Klitschko's this, the Klitschko's that. You know, they're not being fair with me. But listen, in my opinion, he's got a bastard. Oh, you know what? Hold up. Turn your volume down. I should have told you this right from the end. If you're at work, turn your volume down. David Haye has a bastard belt. The WBA heavyweight title is a bastard belt, just to make sure you understand that. Why do I say that? Well, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of those belts that was stripped away from Lennox Lewis, and John Ruiz and Evander Holyfield wrestled over it, and then Nikolai Valuev took it, you know, by a semi-controversial decision over John Ruiz, and then Ruslan Chagayev got it away from Valuev, and lo and behold, Chagayev is actually going forward to try to do the right thing. He's going to, if I'm remembering this correctly, about a year or two ago, is that he's trying to make his mandatory defense against Valuev, who is the only thing he's got to his name is an elimination win against John Ruiz. Again, it's this circus of people that are holding this title hostage. And I guess in Helsinki, Finland, or wherever the heck they were going to fight, something's wrong with Chagayev's blood. It's got too much of something in it, and they said, you know, we can't, the athletic commission won't allow the fight to go forward. So instead, he goes and fights Vladimir Klitschko. A very noble thing to do. And Vladimir Klitschko's got the WBO, the IBF title. Chagayev's got the WBA title. The WBA says, no way, you're stripped. You're not doing this. We're going to let Valuev, you know, have the title again, which paves the way for David Haye to get it, obviously. And basically, Vladimir Klitschko at this point in time has beaten the WBO champion, who is Chris Bird. He has beaten the IBF champion, who's Sultan Ibragimov, and he's beaten the WBA champion, who has not lost that title in the ring, Ruslan Chagayev. So 3 of those 4 major belts, in my mind, belong to Vladimir Klitschko. The 4th, the WBC belt, belongs to his brother Vitaly. So this belt that David Haye is parading around with, it is a bastard belt. It means nothing. It's not worth the paper that they tore down trees to make into other materials that's stuffed inside that thing. It's bastardized. It's nothing. It's worth nothing. It has no leverage as far as I'm concerned. And to further this theory along, everybody thinks he's going to overwhelm the Klitschko because of his speed. He's got rocks in his head. He has absolute rocks in his head. You think they haven't seen guys as fast as him? You think they haven't been hit as hard? You think he hits harder than Lehman Brewster? No. You think he hits harder than Sam Peter? No. I mean, he's in for a brutal, brutal beating. Because they don't like him to begin with. A lot less than I like him. So, I mean, the thing is, he's going to take the beating of his lifetime, and that's why he's trying to angle any way he can to get as much money as he can for this fight. Do I blame him? No. But here he is parading around, and I don't think he's even as deserving of a heavyweight title as Tomas Adamek is. You know, I'd like to see him fight Tomas Adamek. Hell, I'd like to see David Haye fight Chris Arreola. How would that turn out? Have Arreola in his face right off the get-go. If Arreola can take Vitaly Klitschko's shots, David Haye's stuff is like, basically pea shooter stuff to him. I mean, this guy is skating the line is what he's doing. And like Floyd Mayweather, he's cherry-picking fights that are basically allowing him to get to the grand payday where he's finally going to get decapitated. That's just my opinion on it. Was the win impressive? Yeah. I mean, I could look impressive against Audley Harrison if he's going to do that. I mean, I don't understand how this guy wanted a gold medal in the Olympics. And then I started thinking, well, he just turned like 38 or 39, so he was actually 28 or 29 10 years ago when he was in the Olympics. And he's basically, most guys are getting to the twilight of their professional career when he's still an amateur. No wonder he won a gold medal. I mean, go figure. All right, now that monstrosity's over, we've got a lot more to cover on. I'm looking at David Haye's record here. Look at Jean-Marc Mormac, TKO 7. He was down in the 4th round. Enzo Maccarinelli, TKO in the 2nd round. Very impressive, but we all know Maccarinelli has a glass jaw. And then Monty Barrett, who hit the canvas about 6 or 7 times. David Haye hit the canvas himself, and the referee didn't call it a knockdown, which it was, and he acknowledged after the fight it was. Nikolai Valuev, a majority decision, 8 rounds to 4, 8 rounds to 4, and 6 rounds to 6. Dan Rafael writes it was a questionable decision. I thought Haye won the fight. Let's be fair to him. John Ruiz, a 9th round TKO in which Ruiz got bounced off the canvas a couple of times. This record is not exactly jump out at me as being this fantastic. He's not this dynamic cruiserweight that Tomas Adamek was or that Evander Holyfield was. He's not. It's media bullshit is what it is. Trust me, he's getting slaughtered eventually, and it's just how long he can hold off the real slaughterers, whether it's Arreola or Adamek or the Klitschkos. He's going down and bad. Do I want to see this? Not necessarily. I just think it's a sham is what it is. All right. Enough of that nonsense. I've just wasted about 8 minutes talking about this stupid fight. All right. That brings us to the pay-per-view card, in which I'm not really happy with the card itself. But then again, when are these pay-per-view cards ever worth a crap? You got basically Brandon Rios scoring a 5th round TKO over Omri Lothar. I mean, did we think anything else was going to happen? No. I mean, Brandon Rios' smart mouth in the 24/7 is going to get him in trouble. But at the same time, he took down Anthony Peterson. I mean, he's going to be a guy to watch, although maybe for all the wrong reasons. And then Guillermo Rigondeaux won a touch-and-feely split decision over Ricardo Cordoba. How in the hell does one judge have this fight scored for Cordoba? I mean, it's clear in my mind that the fight is easily 9 rounds to 3 or 10 rounds to 2 for, I call him Rigondeaux. He's got a bright future ahead of him and only his 8th fight. And Mike Jones scored a contentious majority decision over Jesus Soto Carras. And, the thing is that I don't know how it's going to look when he squares up against Kell Brook, because Kell Brook is more of a mover and a thinker than Jesus Soto Carras, and I think overall his skill, Kell Brook's skill, is more well-rounded than Mike Jones. Mike Jones is a more one of these muscle guys, rough guys, and I don't know when he's presented with a good boxer what's going to happen to him. So it's a toss-up fight, but after seeing what I saw the other night, I'm beginning to lean towards Kell Brook winning that fight. if he's had the good experience. I don't know if Kell Brooks had the experience that Soto Karass has given Mike Jones. Neither here nor there. But it's good to see younger fighters actually starting to climb. And then Manny Pacquiao taking on Antonio Margarito. All right, listen, here's the deal. It was one of the more brilliant performances by Manny Pacquiao. You got to see his full arsenal, offensive arsenal, his full display of footwork, his full display of ring generalship. Did anything happen that I didn't think was going to happen? No. I mean, I told you he was going to win the numbers game. He won them big. What I am surprised is that Margarito actually landed 200 plus punches on him, and you have to forgive me for not knowing, because in the middle of this I went from watching it with the HBO feed into the 8th round to watching on Sky Sports. So I wasn't privy to all the, what do you call it, numbers, the punch stat numbers. But the thing about this is, Margarito was never going to win this fight. He made tactical errors, he and his corner did, and even approaching the fight. Comes out in the first round jabbing. I'm thinking, well, that's strange. Doing okay with it until Pacquiao lets his hands go. And I never understand why boxers in general, and especially against somebody as dynamic as Pacquiao, cannot get through their skulls that what they do themselves, their game, is never going to force itself on the other guy, the more dynamic, more skillful person. It ain't going to work. So you've got to throw a few wrinkles in it. And as I was going through my mind and watching this fight and taking notes on it, I start going through back through Pacquiao's fights. And again, he's a totally different fighter from when he left the 130-pound division. Because every fighter that he's fought, except for Joshua Clottey, in moving up in weight, including David Diaz, Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, and now Margarito, all of them except for Clottey have decided, I'm going to overpower this guy. He can't take my power. You hear this every time in 24/7 or Countdown or whatever. He can't take my power. I'm a real welterweight. I'm a real super welterweight. This and that. Obviously he can. And when I look back at the second Marquez fight, as well as the first Marquez fight, what did Marquez do differently that basically got him within a whisker of beating Pacquiao? What did Agapito Sanchez do differently that gave Pacquiao a lot of trouble? Now understand, Pacquiao is a different fighter. He's a more complete, rounded fighter. Is that based on the fact that he really is, which I think he is, or the fact that these bigger guys make him be a well-rounded fighter? I think it's a combination of the two. If he is confronted with somebody like Marquez or Mayweather, or somebody with a boxing, or a Corey Spinks, somebody like Sergio Martinez, somebody of that nature, will he revert back to doing things that he used to do, like lunging, which in this fight he didn't do one time? He was never off balance. He was never what I would call out of position. He did get caught with punches from time to time, but it was a brilliant performance all around. And my question becomes this: Margarito and his tactics. You knew he was going to have to go into the lurch from the Adams family, just walk forward and walk him down kind of thing. Why he waited 3 or 4 rounds to do it, I don't know. And a quick recap of the fight is, Margarito comes out jabbing in the first round, even in the second round starts to jab. Pacquiao starts basically, and I think he was doing that to find his range. And Pacquiao was using that opportunity to basically see, that's as far as Margarito can reach. This is how his reflexes work if I move this way or that way. Each of them established ground. The problem is, Pacquiao, being the way faster and more skilled fighter, established which way he can go left and right, forward and back, duck down, duck up, come over around the side, through the middle, whatever he needed to do. He got that into his computer very quickly in the first 2 rounds. Margarito was using those first 2 rounds to jab and find the range so that he could then lurch forward and start the full court press. It's the 3rd round was the turning point in this fight because Margarito was picking up steam and landing punches when Pacquiao ripped him twice to the body with left hands and visibly hurt. The first one stopped him, the second one doubled him over, and Margarito was in retreat after that. He had to catch his breath because he was hurt bad to the body, and the fight just turned. It was kind of like when Cotto got knocked down the second time in the Pacquiao fight. The whole fight turned. Now, there was another switch of momentum in the fight. It came in the 6th round, because that's when Margarito got his chance and he hurt Pacquiao to the body himself. All of a sudden, Margarito was on top of Pacquiao. He had hurt him in the body. He made him stop punching. Pacquiao admitted after the fight that he was hurt to the body. I wonder, and this is just in retrospect, would the fight have been even any closer or different if Margarito would have gotten to that point before Pacquiao hurt him to the body, because he was definitely weakened in the 3rd round. Overall, a one-sided fight. I don't know what the fight proves, because, you know, as some critics would say, Margarito didn't deserve even a chance at the fight. As the fight went on from the 6th round, Margarito, for a moment in each round, would get Pacquiao in a precarious situation on the ropes or something, land a few punches to the head, land a few punches to the body, caught him with the left hook one time when he had him against the ropes, couldn't follow up. Pacquiao would spin out, start punching, you know, blasting Margarito's face. The 3rd round is when, 3rd or 4th round is when Margarito's eye starts swelling. Some are saying that the cut came from a headbutt. Basically, his right orbital bone was broken. All of you haters out there that are sending me emails saying that he's never going to fight again, Oscar De La Hoya had his orbital bone broke by Steve Forbes, and he was back in the ring the same year. So, turn your volume down. If you're YouTube user, Sam UK Sam, fuck you and your fucking retarded posse you run with. You're blocked, you can't get to me, you can create as many accounts as you want. The good news is for you is that Cotto's going to get a second chance at Margarito. The bad news is he's probably going to eat 250 to 300 punches again. And ask Pacquiao, Margarito can punch with legal hand wraps. Going forward, the 10th round, Pacquiao hurt Margarito again, or at least stunned him with a counter right hook. And that's when they started basically asking for the fight to be stopped. I thought the fight was going to be stopped anywhere from the 9th, 10th, 11th, to 12th round. And I really thought that from the 6th round on, that Pacquiao had hurt his hand, which the reports now is that he hurt his wrist, because he went from driving Margarito back with his shots to just pop shotting him, moving, get hit a few times, pop shot again, reset over and over again. Alright, clear-cut decision. Personally, the only round I gave Margarito in the fight was the 6th round, and that's when Lampley and Emmanuel Stewart were arguing. Emmanuel Stewart was saying, you know, comparatively, that's a good round for Margarito, even though he thought Pacquiao might have won the round. Judges would give him the round, blah, 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 blah. The 6th round is the only round I gave Margarito. Maybe the 12th, just from coming forward, but he was still getting out hit. Unanimous decision. What's the fallout from this now? What is the fallout from this? The fallout from this is this. Pacquiao and Margarito are both on these lines in which Margarito is worthless to anybody except for the likes of Cotto or Sergio Martinez, somebody who he's already beaten, and they want to maybe a 3rd fight with Kermit Cintron. Who knows? I'm just throwing that out there. It's not real. Pacquiao, obviously, I was thinking it's either Margarito. I'm sorry, scratch that, check that. It's either, for Pacquiao, it's either Floyd Mayweather, if they can get this on, or possibly a rematch with Cotto to unify those 2 junior middleweight titles. Not that it's a good idea. Or back down to welterweight, or back down to junior welterweight, where the real big fights are. And when I say real big fights, I mean the winner of Devin Alexander and Timothy Bradley. I mean young guys that are going to put forth a good effort. I think if there's going to be somebody that's going to beat Pacquiao, it's going to be somebody smaller rather than bigger. And the reason being is his speed advantage is very much more apparent against a bigger guy than it is a little guy. And those of you who are out there watching this, answer this question for me. Type it on the channel comments. Did Pacquiao look like he had that great of a speed advantage over Juan Manuel Marquez? I didn't think so. I didn't think he had that great of a speed advantage over Eric Morales or Marco Antonio Barrera, or he had an advantage, but it wasn't devastating advantage. And I didn't think he had that great of an advantage when he was at 122 pounds over most of those guys. My thing is, I think when I say smaller, if somebody's going to beat him, it's going to be somebody smaller who isn't outsped by him like the taller, clumsier, lungier guys like the Margaritos, the Claudis, the Cottos, the De La Hoyas, and the robots, basically. You know, every time I see this, and then we get into this conversation on my channel about, and I'm like, this is for Avellino and Gil, who is AZNE, VDDZ, Ring Warrior 12, and Die All Day. The Grand Slam of BoxingInfo, basically, the 4 that take up the channel comments and keep the conversations going. and I'll address Lane 99 too. Where does Pacquiao fall in history? Well, he is obviously the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world today. Let's be clear about that. You cannot put a number on a guy that's current, that's in his prime. It's not fair to him, it's not fair to those who come before you. Ring Warrior 12, I quote, "I wasn't born when Ali was fighting, I don't care. 100 years from now, it won't, only thing that people are going to remember are Michael Jordan and Manny Pacquiao." How delusional are you? Anybody that knows anything about boxing, and obviously your knowledge is lacking, knows the name Sugar Ray Robinson, knows the name Sugar Ray Leonard, knows the name Marvin Hagler, knows the name Muhammad Ali, knows Joe Louis, knows Rocky Marciano, knows Kid Gavilan. Knows, the list can go on and on. Now, may I know some more than you guys do? Yes. May I know less than others? Obviously. But it's not anybody that pretends to know about boxing, because boxing is more about the shit that's just put in front of you and force-fed into your mouth by HBO or whoever. So let's be clear about this. As far as Manny Pacquiao is concerned, I recognize that he is the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world. He is an all-time great boxer. He is probably one of the best boxers of this past generation. I really wish that he'd fight Mayweather so we can put this to rest of the best boxer of the past 10 years. Now, in regards to his place in history, I'm not going to go and say he's top 10, top 5, top 20, top 50. He's one of the best of all time. What does that mean? How am I comparing this? All right, this comes to Avellino now, who was bright enough to put Yuri Boy Campus's gaudy numbers up on the screen. My contention is that when Ring Warrior 12 says, who the hell is Benny Leonard or Sam Langford? I say, well, Sam Langford's a guy that has 178 knockouts in 200 and something fights. Manny Pacquiao won't even have maybe even a third, lucky if he has a third total number of fights, as this guy has knockouts. Benny Leonard's got I don't know what it was, 79 or 80 knockouts in, I don't know how many fights. And again, Pacquiao's going to be lucky to have that total number of fights equaling their KOs. Then if you want to press, and I understand, the fighters of the past used to fight every week, the marketing was different, everything was different. Do you understand that food wasn't processed, that these human beings were tougher than you can ever imagine? The people I grew up with were tougher than you can imagine. So, you can't compare apples to apples. And when I'm saying this is, rewind back to, I bring up the three more modern day, Roberto Duran, Alexis Arguello, Julio Cesar Chavez. Basically the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, or in that mix in there. All three of them have more knockouts than Manny Pacquiao is going to end up with total fights. Do I think that they could all beat Manny Pacquiao? Maybe. In their prime? Maybe not. The thing is this. I have a hard time visualizing Manny Pacquiao beating Alexis Arguello either at 126 pounds or 130 pounds. Now, why am I comparing the two? Well, Alexis Arguello had 8 title defenses at 130 pounds. Julio Cesar Chavez had 9 title defenses at 130 pounds. Who's the other one? Roberto Duran had 12 title defenses at 135 pounds. Okay, the all-time greats, before this new wave of pay-per-view bullshit started, would get in a division and they'd clean it out from front to back. Example, Oscar De La Hoya had, I think, 8 or 9 title defenses at 147. Felix Trinidad had 15 title defenses at 147. So collecting these belts is great. Okay, Pacquiao's the only person to win 4 titles in 4 of the original 8 weight classes. Only 2 of them were lineal, despite what bullshit Max Kellerman feed you on the pay-per-view show. Because when Pacquiao was coming to the ring, Max Kellerman said, at the very least, this was for 8 titles, but at the very least, Pacquiao's won 4 of the original 8 weight classes, linear titles. Bullshit! David Diaz's WBC belt is not lineal. It was the bastard belt in that division that was stolen from somebody else. Alright, the WBO title in the welterweight division, that's bastardized too. Paul Williams gave that title up. It wasn't part of the belts collected by Corey Spinks and Ricardo Mayorga and Vernon Forrest and Shane Mosley. It wasn't part of that. But let me get into this now. So, in his place, in Pacquiao's defense, is he one of the all-time greats? Yes. Are some of you basically inflating and blowing out of proportion wins over Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera? I have news for you. Those two guys don't hold a candle to Julio Cesar Chavez. Those two guys don't hold a candle to Alexis Arguello. They don't hold a candle to Duran. They're just very, very good top 10 pound-for-pound fighters that existed in this era. That's all. And you know, the same thing with Ricky Hatton or with, you know, any of these guys. He's going to have to fight and beat Mayweather for me to give him a number. And the same thing for Mayweather. I mean, Mayweather's in a worse boat than Pacquiao as far as history is concerned. I mean, because all the guys that Mayweather won't fight, that he's ducking, Pacquiao's been beating them. But that's not to say, you gotta understand something. Comparing beating Margarito and Cotto and Clottey, you can't compare that to beating the guys that Duran put in the hospital. I mean, Esteban de Jesus. I mean, solid world championship quality fighters. Ken Buchanan. I mean, the guys Alexis Arguello beat. Alfredo Escalera. Ruben Olivares. I mean, we're talking about Hall of Fame material. So, I mean, will Morales and Barrera get into the Hall of Fame? Yes, absolutely. Ricky Hatton probably will. De La Hoya, you know, with the amount of dicks they suck, yeah, of course he's going to get in. But you know what I'm saying is, those guys aren't killers like the guys in the 70s and 80s. I'm sorry, you're not comparing. They're not apples to apples. Now with this lineage thing, what's more important to me? That's what you asked me. What's more important, a guy collecting belts or a guy man beating the man beating the man beating the man thing? Essentially, if the guy who is the man who beat the man is active and fighting fights, that's more important. If the guy collecting belts is fighting all the best fighters he can get into the ring to try to make lineage, that will hold precedence over the man that beat the man if he is way more active. So, to give you a for instance, in this welterweight division, you have Pacquiao, who has this WBO trinket, and he's beaten Cotto for it, who beat Michael Jennings when Paul Williams walked away from it. He's beaten Margarito in a different division, although they're all the same to me. And he's beaten Joshua Clottey. All right. Andre Berto still stands with a green belt. Do I think he has a chance against Pacquiao? No. There's still a question mark, though. Pacquiao is neither collecting belts nor has he beaten the man who beat the man who beat the man. So this isn't linear. In essence, until 1 year strikes on May 1st that Floyd Mayweather hasn't fought, you know, Floyd Mayweather beat Mosley, who beat Margarito, who beat Cotto in a 1 versus 2 fight. Because basically Margarito had the IBF belt from Kermit Cintron and Cotto had the WBA belt that he had won. So basically the titles were being collected and Ring Magazine said, you know, this is going to be the lineage. And listen, I could talk forever about this, but I'm going to go back in history and I'm going to tell you show you how the lineage is traced in the welterweight division, starting back in the early 80s. 2 champions, WBA and WBC. Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard. September of 1981, they square off. Leonard wins by a 14th round stoppage. The WBA and WBC titles are unified. There is a linear champion. Leonard makes a title defense, retires. The two titles split apart again. Donald Curry wins the WBA. Milton McCrory wins the WBC. The IBF is created. They say, you know what? Nobody needs to fight for our title. We recognize Donald Curry's the best fighter in the division. We'll give him our title. Curry's got the WBA and the IBF. In 1985, December of, those two fight. Curry knocks McCrory out in the 2nd round. Brutal knockout. He's got all 3 belts. He's the linear champion. Makes a title defense. Wins a 2nd round knockout. Invites the European champion, Lloyd Huntington, to come over in 1986 from England. Lloyd Huntington scores the major upset, one of the biggest upsets in boxing history over Donald Curry. Donald Curry is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world at this time. 1 and 2 with Marvin Hagler, flip-flop, depending upon what you believe at the time. But Donald Curry was #1 on the list for a short time. Lloyd Huntington stops Donald Curry on a cut in the 6th round. He has all the 3 belts. Lineage, basically restored when Curry beat McCrory, and now passed on to Lloyd Huntington. Lloyd Huntington says, I'm not going to South Africa, I'm not fighting a South African. WBA belt gets thrown in the garbage. Big deal. He continues fighting title defenses, and finally he loses his title to Jorge Vaca on a, I think a disqualification is what it was. They fight an immediate rematch, and he whacks out Vaca in 3 rounds. So he continues on his merry way. Meanwhile, Mark Breland wins the vacant belt, loses it to Marlon Starling. The idea is they're going to get Marlon Starling and Lloyd Huntington together, even though Lloyd Huntington has the lineage, and Starling loses his title on a freak no contest. It eventually became a no contest knockout loss to Tomas Molinares when he knocked him out after the bell. The WBA title is in limbo again. They decide, HBO puts this together, where they're going to have, technically, in everybody's mind, Starling still is the WBA champion because they've robbed him blind in this fight. The bell clearly rang when this Molinares hits him after the bell and knocks him out. Starling gets back in his next fight. He's going to fight Huntington anyway. Huntington's only got the WBC belt. The IBF belt's been stripped. Simon Brown's got that belt. Alright, but the lineage still rests with Lloyd Huntington. Starling beats Huntington. He's got the WBC belt now. The WBA belt is, Breland wins the vacant belt on that undercard, and Simon Brown still has the IBF belt. This goes on for, this is 1989, this goes on for another year or so, when the WBC champion, well actually, Marlon Starling makes a couple of defenses, he beats Lloyd Huntington, he's got the lineage now, he's the WBC champion, he makes a title defense or 2, and then loses the title to Maurice Blocker on national TV, on ABC Wide World of Sports in 1990, I believe this was. Loses it on a unanimous decision, gets out hustled. Guess who's in his corner? Guess who's in Marlon Starling's corner when this happens? None other than Freddie Roach. And what are Freddie Roach's words of wisdom in between the 11th and 12th round? Come on, champ. We really need this fight, champ. And I'm not kidding. That is what he said. That is what he said to Marlon Starling when he's losing his title. Come on, champ. We really need to win this fight, champ. Starling loses the title. The lineage rests with Maurice Blocker, which is a joke. In any event, a year later, Blocker and Simon Brown unify the WBC and the IBF titles. The lineage is going to be preserved by this. Simon Brown knocks out his friend Blocker in the 10th round. He's got the WBC and the IBF belt. Now, for some reason, Brown refused to fight somebody, and he was going to fight, I guess Buddy McGirt instead. And they strip him of the IBF title. Basically, at the same time, Mark Breland goes and loses his title to Aaron Davis, who loses to Meldrick Taylor, who loses to the guy from Venezuela, Crisanto Espana, who loses to Ike Corte. Pause it right there, but with Simon Brown, he loses his title and the linear title to Buddy McGirt, who loses it to Pernell Whitaker, who loses it to Oscar De La Hoya. Now, here's where the lineage gets strengthened again. It's vaguely with Oscar De La Hoya. De La Hoya runs off a number of title defenses, so does Ike Corte. A fight set up between those two. It's thought to be a unification fight. WBC, WBA, just like old days. The WBA strips Corte of the title for not fighting James Page or Andre Pastrayev or something like that. The fight with De La Hoya goes on anyway, and it's a rock'em sock'em affair. You all know the details. Both fighters hit the deck. De La Hoya escapes with a razor-thin split decision that's controversial because I thought Corte won the fight. He still has his WBC title, technically strengthens the lineage, and then a year later, or later on that year, he fights Felix Trinidad, who has the IBF title. He gets it, I'm trying to think of what's, basically he got Felix Trinidad after Simon Brown stripped of the IBF title. Maurice Blocker beats Glenwood Beast, the real Beast Brown, and then gets annihilated in San Diego by Felix Trinidad, who runs off 15 title defenses, and meets De La Hoya to unify the titles, and we all know what happened there. Basically, Oscar De La Hoya throws away the fight in the last 4 rounds. Trinidad is the undisputed linear welterweight champion. He walks away from the division. There is none anymore. De La Hoya gets a WBC strap back by beating Daryl Coley. Promptly loses his title to Shane Mosley. The WBA belt is won by James Page, then lost to Six Heads Lewis, then lost to Ricardo Mayorga. Mosley loses his title to Vernon Forrest, and then loses a rematch. Vernon Forrest and Ricardo Mayorga go ahead and meet up head-to-head. Mayorga stops Forrest in 3 rounds, beats him in the rematch. Lineage is starting to grow again. Corey Spinks, through a long list of nonsense and strippings, wins the IBF title, fights Mayorga. At the same time, Margarito's got this WBO belt, which has meant nothing up to this point. Mayorga fights Corey Spinks and loses a decision. Corey Spinks makes a title defense against Zab Judah, beats him, then loses to Zab Judah, who is now the linear champion. 3 of those 4 belts are together. Margarito is just kind of ramping up. Judah ends up losing in a huge upset to Carlos Baldemir. Then basically the IBF or the WBA says, no, we didn't really recognize that as a title fight. It was only a WBC title fight. You know, here's the deal. Baldemir is only the WBC champion. Bunch of bullshit. Zab Judah fights Mayweather. It means nothing. There's no lineage. Mayweather then fights Baldemir, who is the linear champion, and beats him. And then basically beats what did he do after Baldemir? I don't know. He fought De La Hoya, he fought Hatton, this and that, and then he stepped away from the ring. Okay. Paul Williams beats Margarito. Margarito beats Kermit Cintron. Cotto beats Quintana for a vacant title. Basically, Margarito and Cotto will come together. The powers to be say, this is the what he called this is going to be the linear champion after this fight. Margarito takes out Cotto. Margarito loses to Mosley. Mosley loses to Mayweather, and here we are. Okay, it's been traced back 20 years. There is a such thing as the linear champion. I hate to say this, but it actually is Mayweather. And it will be until come May. Because if come May he doesn't fight again, I don't give a shit what they say. The person who's beaten the most guys in the division is now on track to be the linear champion. So what does hold more power with me? The fact that Mayweather's sitting on this fictitious title, or the fact that Pacquiao's beating all the guys that he's ducking? Technically, Mayweather is active. He just fought in May. If he hadn't fought in a year, my answer would be Pacquiao beating Claudian, Margarito, and Cotto within a calendar year. That's the truth. Within 12 months, he has beaten Cotto, Claudia, and Margarito. 3 guys that Mayweather won't get in the ring with. Now, let's rewind to the lightweight division, because this is a source of controversy with whether or not Pacquiao is a linear champion. The titles are being unified. Jose Luis Castillo fights against Julio Diaz, who's the IBF champion. The title's not at stake. They strip him. And he stops him in the 10th round. Castillo and Corrales fight. Corrales stops Castillo in the 10th round. Controversy or not, neither here nor there. Corrales is the linear champion. Corrales fights, rematch with Castillo and gets knocked out, but it's not for the title. It's an over-the-weight fight. It wasn't a fighter of 135 pounds or lighter that knocked out Corrales. Corrales goes and loses a unanimous decision to Casamayor. Casamayor gets stopped in 11 rounds by Juan Manuel Marquez. At the same time, this is just basically, I don't know, it was the WBC, no, it was the WBC, and I don't know what the other belt was, because they stripped the WBC off and had David Diaz fight Eric Morales for it. Where this came from, I don't know. But in any event, the WBO belt is gotten back. The WBA belt is won in succession by Juan Diaz over Lak Vassim. The WBO belt is won back by Acelino Freitas. The IBF belt is won once again by Julio Diaz. Juan Diaz beats Acelino Freitas and beats Julio Diaz, both of them by 8th round TKO. Okay. He then loses to Nate Campbell. 3 of these belts are locked up now. Nate Campbell has them. The WBC belt is won by David Diaz and lost promptly to Manny Pacquiao, and then given up promptly by Manny Pacquiao. The ring belt is held by Juan Manuel Marquez. He has beaten the man who has beaten the man who has beaten the man. Juan Manuel Marquez beats Juan Diaz, who has been defeated. So it doesn't hold as much steam that he had all these belts because he lost them. He's active in the division. He fought Floyd Mayweather. He went back to the division. He is the man in that division, and just so happens he picked up some other belts because they had been vacant, and they started sanctioning some of his fights with Juan Diaz. So enough, or even, well, Rocky Warriors was a junior lightweight, but neither here nor there. So the man at 135 pounds is Juan Manuel Marquez. Manny Pacquiao never was the linear person at 135. That's all I want to talk about that, because I've already, again, explained that, you know, a guy who's in his prime cannot be put, a number cannot be put on where he is in the pound-for-pound list of all time. And if you're comparing resumes, again, Arguello, Duran, and Chavez have more knockouts, have more title fights than Pacquiao did. And it's just plain and simple. Having more pay-per-view fights doesn't get you ahead on the greatest of all time list. All right, enough of the results now. Let's look ahead to this week's fight on HBO. Rematch between Sergio Martinez and Paul Williams, and this video is going way longer than I wanted it to. Basically, Sergio Martinez, Paul Williams. You know, I thought that Williams maybe eked out the first fight. I could have, if it would have went to Martinez, I would have been okay with it. The only difference I can see in this fight, which would make me lean towards Martinez, is two things. One, Williams looked terrible against Cintron. Looked horrendous. He wasn't losing, but he wasn't winning. It was just a horrendous abomination is what it was. And Martinez looked very good against Pavlik. Martinez looked real good against Pavlik, and I think it's one of those things when a guy wins a title, they become, like Gil Clancy would say, 25% better. It definitely was the case when he was at 154 pounds. So in his mind, he has certification in his mind, justification. He is the champion. And again, he is the linear middleweight champion. He's the real deal. Bernard Hopkins collected all these belts, lost them to Jermaine Taylor, they got splintered. Lost them to Kelly Pavlik, they got splintered. Kelly Pavlik lost them to Martinez. The lineage is with Sergio Martinez. He is the true blue, undisputed middleweight champion of the world. No matter who else is parading around with a belt in that division, it means nothing. The champion of this division is Sergio Martinez. Why they're fighting at 157 pounds, I don't know. The fight is, you know, I'm getting them. You guys are sending me these emails with like blood advocates videos about this catchweight shit. I'm getting sick of it too. I'm getting fucking sick of it. The title is for the middleweight title. It should be at 160 pounds. You weigh in and you get to come into the ring with whatever you want. The same thing with this junior middleweight fight. Although I think it was advantageous to Margarito that the weight was lower. 150 pounds. What? It's for the junior middleweight title. I mean, enough of this crap. The other thing too is, let me finish this with Martinez and Williams. Those two things would led me to believe that Martinez has a very good chance of winning this fight, but to me it's a 50-50 fight. I expect Williams, again, to get the benefit of the doubt. He's the English-speaking fighter. You know, HBO loves that, although Martinez in his movie star looks definitely has their eye. It's going to be a tough fight. The thing about it is I think in their first fight, Martinez hurt Williams worse than Williams hurt Martinez at any time in the fight. And I think in understanding the X's and O's of what happens, it's very difficult for a southpaw to fight another southpaw. Martinez is the one that adjusts to that better. I expect this fight to go the distance. I would say it may end up just like the last fight they had, where Williams wins on a controversial, razor-thin decision, or Martinez may get the nod this time. I hope the fight that deserves to win gets the win, is what I'm saying. And it's too hard to pick. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, I'd say I'd probably take Williams by a decision, but a razor-thin decision. But just because of his work rate is higher normally than Martinez. Martinez punches are cleaner and crisper. Getting back to what I was saying about southpaw fighting a southpaw, Martinez adjusts to this better. Williams has Swiss cheese defense. Let's be honest. He has Swiss cheese defense. He gets hit by orthodox fighters. He gets hit by southpaws. When he fought Carlos Quintana, he got rocked by a guy that doesn't hit that hard. And he got rocked out of the southpaw stance. Martinez hits a little harder and a little sharper than Quintana, and is definitely better, has better ring generalship. So when it comes down to those intangibles, I expect Martinez to do better. But and Williams, for some reason, did not look like Williams when he fought Cintron. I don't know what the deal is with that. So don't expect. I wouldn't be surprised if Martinez wins this fight going away. on those notes, but I would not bet on it. I wouldn't wager on it. And getting back to what I was about to say, going back to what will it take to beat Pacquiao? I don't understand. I started to say this before, switching gears. What Margarito comes out jabbing, and yet it's been shown time and time again that, and a lot of you have brought this to my attention, that a left-handed dominant fighter out of an orthodox stance is never going to do well against Pacquiao. It's got to be somebody with a good right hand. Some of you have brought up Mayweather for this. Juan Manuel Marquez. If you watch the tapes of the fight, and I know Pacquiao's a different fighter, Juan Manuel Marquez led with his straight right hand and used his jab as a steadying weapon at the end of the exchanges. The same way Julio Cesar Chavez fought every southpaw he ever fought. Lead right hands. Believe me, he hit Pernell Whitaker with them a number of times. The way Floyd Mayweather finally adjusted to Zab Judah, he dispensed with his jab and just went lead right hand crazy and busted Zab Judah up. That's what it's going to take, I think, to offset Pacquiao. I don't understand why Margarito and his people didn't basically practice, even though it wasn't going to make a difference in the fight. Hard lead right hand, left hook to the body or uppercut underneath, or left hook around the head afterwards, and then reset. Jab on your way out to basically reset the exchange. I don't understand. The patterns to beat a southpaw, and Pacquiao is not a slick southpaw, he's a dangerous southpaw, are there. And none of these guys come into the ring. Margarito's got a pretty good right hand. I don't understand why they didn't use it. Maybe some of you know, I don't know. But it wasn't going to make a difference anyway, because he's going to lose the numbers game. It was just that simple. That's going to do it for this episode of, 46 minutes. I'll be back hopefully next week recapping this Sergio Martinez. The camera's been acting up again. It took me forever to get this video done. That's going to do it, folks. Take care, and I will see you next week.